hear you now.
So my grandmother decided, she said, Emmanuel, you know, I'm gonna go. But before she left, she decided to put a pot, you know those big pots that we use for the bean soup? Oh no, the big ones. She put her boot in that pot with water so that the young ones would think that there was something cooking. And she went out for hours, just as he did, searching and could find nothing. She returned. By this time, my dad had rested. He went back out yet again. And long and short, they found no food, nothing that day, not even a little piece of red potatoes, my dad always told us. Her shoe boiled all day and all night. And as the children asked, Mom, what are we gonna eat? Because you can imagine the smell of this food. It smells like meat because it's leavened. Grandmother would tell them, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And she played this game with them until they fell asleep that night. My father, instead of getting up at 5 o'clock, got up at 3 o'clock the next day and went out, and he was successful in securing food. But he never, ever forgot the feeling of hunger, the feeling of poverty, the feeling of being inadequate because he felt that he had failed his father's command to take care of his mom and children while he was away. And so that created a bond between my father and my grandmother, Clara, that to the day she died, my father, it was his joy, his pure joy to find clothing for my grandmother. She was a very petite lady. I don't know if you mentioned how petite. Grandmother, she didn't stand 5 feet tall. She was a little petite person. And my dad would painstakingly find seamstress to create clothing for my grandmother. So one of the dresses that are in the book is a very beautiful pink dress.
And I think that's
yeah.
dress.
Yes, and forever, the flowers,
Yes.
that was my dad's thing, flowers. And her favorite piece of, she doesn't have, well, you can't see it in that picture. My grandmother always wore a necklace that usually was tucked in her garment that is on display at the Smithsonian right now. You can go and see it. And it's a beautiful pendant. It is the first jewelry my grandfather was able to give to my grandmother because they didn't have any money, so they didn't have wedding bands to exchange. And the first piece of jewelry he gave her is a platinum and diamond encrusted pendant. And on the top is the word Allah in Arabic, and on the bottom is our last name, Muhammad. And my grandfather did that as a reminder that Allah is first and family is second. And that my grandmother cherished to the day she died. She was almost buried in it, but thank God, a lot different. And now the Smithsonian has it and it's on display. But my grandfather, with his first real monies, he wanted to give the woman he adored this piece of jewelry. And she never took it off. And did you ever tell them their nicknames for each other? Everybody thinks my grandparents were so serious, and they were. My grandfather had a great sense of humor, and gentlemen, my grandfather used to cook bean soup in his bow tie. Yes, he did. Yeah. You want to tell them their nicknames?
Yeah. Well, my grandmother would call him E.H. And he would call her girl. And she remembers some more. You tell me. Yeah, but that's what he used to call her girl.
They loved each other. It was an undying love. And my grandfather missed my grandmother to such a degree that when she passed away, he said, I will not live 3 years beyond her death because I cannot go that long without her.
Yeah.
So contrary to popular belief, she was his ride or die, as these young people say. And he couldn't imagine or fathom life without her. they were like hand in glove. It was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful to see them together. Her grandmother used to sing and hum as she worked, and I think Halimah mentions it in the book. And so, as she got older and illness set in, she wouldn't come down as much. And of course, I didn't know when my great-grandmother was passing away. I just thought she was old. I didn't know.
I was just wondering also whether there'd be time for a question.
Okay. And so, she would sit in the window. She had a bump out window, and we would watch the brothers on duty and who drove up and left away, and she would sing and just love on me. She was my best friend. It was hard growing up in a world where, we were the outsiders. You talk about bullying. You were this weird creature. You didn't smoke, you didn't drink, you didn't eat pork, you didn't go to the movies. So the kids in the neighborhood, we were just the weirdos, and she was a great friend. Yes, sir.
So, I'd like to say,
I don't want to be the one who asked something first. And if you don't mind.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, on the point. Brother asked me about Dr. King real quick. Dr. King was invited to have dinner with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when everything was prepared that day, I was called from school early because I worked for my grandparents. This is how I learned from them. I was 12 and a half when I started. When Dr. King came that day, I was probably about 15, 16. And we had to leave early from school that day to pull out all the silver, and we had to polish it with Kaya and I, her big sister. We had to polish the silver and get the tray ready. They had those rolling carts, and we had to get the tray ready with all the condiments, and they used pure cream. Okay, pure cream, not this stuff we get, and sugar, brown sugar, and coffee, and bottled water. And it was put on the tray, and it was rolled into the living room of the mansion onto the side. And that mansion, that living room had two big sliding doors you could pull up from the wall. I didn't really remember that they existed. Those doors existed until Dr. King came. They stayed open. That living room stayed open. But when Dr. King arrived, he told my grandmother, he said, I want you to take care of the dinner guest and escort Mrs. King to the table. So Mrs. King was sat to the table and there were women and men there, but mostly there were women that day. There were more women. And so they closed the door after that to the living room, and we didn't see them. It was like 3 in the afternoon. By the time we saw them, it was looking like this outside. Sun was going down, and so I wished I could have been a fly on the wall. Well, we didn't get to hear what happened in there. No one did until they were invited to come in. I think there was some people who got to come in there. When they came out, it was the first time I had seen Dr. King, and it was the last time I saw him up front personally. But he came into the dining room area, and I never forgot him. He was about the same height as my grandfather, about 5'6", maybe a half inch taller, not much. And I saw this glow around this man. Beautiful soul. I love that brother. He was a wonderful man.
That's right.
And he came in, and my grandfather was so excited. It was strange because it looked like he grew a couple of inches. My grandfather, I swear. Maybe it's just my perception, but had to be. But when he came in, he said, everyone, he said, I want you to meet Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. And he graciously bowed his head and said, good evening. He was such a wonderful guy. And so he began to tell us just a little bit. He didn't tell us too much. And before he left, his closing comments was, brother, he said, I'll get our people over here. He said, but I want you to go to the mountaintop and shout it out over there. So they were coming together. Brother Amira, they were coming together. And Allah knew that it was time for things to get shut down because that would probably cause more problems than we could have handled.
Right.
So Allah called him, and then a few years later he called the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So that's in the book. more details, but, you know, I wanted to answer you on that. I believe before you asked the question, Sister here had a question.
Yes,
For either one of us.
okay. I guess for you, you know, you talk about, when, Farad Muhammad, you know, was teaching your grandfather, you know, the, Elijah Muhammad, you know, his teaching, you know, what he learned or whatever, you know, and wanted him to convey to, you know, the world of people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things, if you can remember, you know, that he, learned from, Farad Muhammad, and that he, you know, passed on to you all, you know, and instilled in you all, you know, whatever.
Okay, did you hear her question?
No, you didn't.
She wanted to know what Master Farad passed on to his student, Elijah. That's a whole lot.
And the things that he
Again, to
wanted
tell
you to know and teach you about what he had learned from Farad, you know, that would, you know, make you a better person or instilled in you, you know, or whatever.
Oh, boy. That's
I
a
mean,
lot. We got to give you a real
everything
short
from-
answer on that.
They got all his lessons and stuff down, go down to.
No, I just wanted to, you know,
Did
just,
you
you
get
know,
all
just
of
give
it?
me a few, you know,
Oh,
some of
you
the
mean
things that
like
you
more
can remember,
personal
you know,
things,
whether
like
it's
he
moral,
taught
whether it's
more-
this or that, or whatever else, you know, that he learned from Farad.
Well, I remember like my father, because he was the oldest, Master Farad actually taught my father how to drive.
Oh,
So
okay.
my father spent a lot of time with Farad Muhammad as well. He literally taught him how to drive a car. He taught him how to, personal hygiene and grooming. My granddad was impeccable with that, but
So did he have a lot of,
Master Farad took it even further
right,
and taught my dad personal grooming that to this day my brothers
Mhm.
like razor bumps you don't have to have.
Uh-huh.
There was techniques that he used and
Really?
taught them.
Mhm.
Right, that
So he
just
never,
mentoring for
taught him, you know, the things that we hear today about the white man being the devil, you know, blue eyed, this and that and another and stuff like that, and I don't know,
well he
maybe there were
did
some other
teach
things
he
about,
did teach
and,
them
and I can
about
understand why he
Yakub
felt
and-
that way because of the persecution, a lot of the oppression that was, you know, being, you know, inflicted upon the Afro Americans, etc. You know.
He did
times.
teach them about Yakub because
Yeah.
my father talked about that extensively, and that's part of the lessons. We have English lessons.
Yeah,
C1
it's-
you have.
Mhm.
It's a lot to
Um,
say.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and message to the black man. It's a
But,
lot.
but what he wanted to, like I said to you, it was a wake up message.
Mhm.
So when he said things, they were things, you know, they were just real exotic type, exciting and excitable type things that happened. And Master Farad would mainly wanted, he wanted us to first of all to be clean. He said you cannot touch the Holy Quran if you don't clean yourself up and clean your mind. So he taught us, that was one of the first things he taught everybody,
Mhm.
is good hygiene, like she said,
Mhm.
good manners. Sound familiar? The
Mhm.
prophet did that too. Good manners. He told us to obey the law of the land. He told us that we didn't have to depend on the white man for our survival. That we need to learn how to be independent, and that we should pray. And he told us God's name was Allah. And back then, sister, when the Ku Klux Klan was in full force, I mean, if you just Google it, and you see how ridiculous. You talk about Donald Trump. How about a whole city full of Donald Trumps walking down the street
They're all over.
with the whole
All
get
over the world now.
Yeah.
They in blue.
and they were behaving like Julia the slave said, right? You look like God in the face, but you're the devil in your soul.
And you have to understand.
And that was a
the
racial image that was cast.
headquarters of the KKK was in Indiana, which was just 20 minutes
Yeah, I know
away
about
from
it.
the south side of Chicago.
So back in the 30s, sister, that was fitting.
Yeah.
Because we didn't understand why, as a people, why these people hate us. You know, why did they do us this way? So the wake up message was to let us know you don't have to live like this anymore. God wants the good people. So the good people are the ones that obey God. The ones who hurt human beings are devils. So it wasn't so much about the color, it was the behavior.
Where you at?
Yes, sister.
Assalamu alaikum.
It did. She was. I know. He did. She before we started. I had to relate to. I'm sorry, then you're next, brother.
You make me forget.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
question is actually along the same lines. You were saying that Ross Farah came from India.
Lahore, India, yes.
I'm just wondering how he had the context to be like to like appeal to like the racial experience of African Americans given his background.
Lahore, India?
Well, when you think about, if you think about Indians and how the British Empire, British imperialism, during that time, literally, you already had the caste system in India. You know, they still have it to this day, unfortunately.
That's right.
But you also had an imperialist British Empire who usurped Indians' religion, authority, everything, and pretty much occupied their country and made them less than human in their own country. Literally set up, they built the country clubs, they built these facilities for their government to come, for the British government and officials to come and live. And they spent summers in India, big officials within the ranks of the British government. But yet, all Indians could be around these individuals was served.